Okay, so at this point, it doesn't really matter if Kubo is coming to Liverpool or not. At this point, I kind of want to just map out why some of these rumours are happening, how some of these rumours might have happened in the first place, and really how to respond as a fan base, because I'm getting a little bit bored of the same cycles, and I'd imagine that you are too. If you haven't already hit the subscribe button, then feel free to do that at the end of the video. There's a Patreon, there's also a Discord. The Discord link is down there. Take a look. Kubo is, by definition, an exciting signing because signings are very often exciting, especially under Michael Edwards and especially in this era at Liverpool, right? Over the past decade, you could be forgiven for thinking that Liverpool have only pretty much unearthed a lot of players. There have been other players, of course, that we've signed, very high-profile signings. Alisson, Virgil van Dijk, those kind of level of players. Even Fabinho, I think, was a player that you could argue was a high-profile player within Europe or a high-profile signing that a lot of other big clubs wanted to sign. So Liverpool don't just have one profile of player that they sign. But reading the comments and reading some of the analysis of Kubo, some people very much into it. They want to see a Mo Salah replacement, which follows the Wataru Endo quote of, who are Liverpool, which Japanese player would you look to sign? His logic is, if Salah is on his way out, which naturally, coming towards the end of career, he would be, Kubo, who is a right-sided player and has been a quality player in La Liga, granted, but a quality player for the last probably 1-2 seasons in La Liga, then he will be a great replacement. The natural other side of that is, of course, sometimes Kubo can be easily shut down. There have been stats which obviously indicate that he's not the prolific goal scorer that Mo Salah is. I don't know many other profiles that are the prolific goal scorer. And frankly, I read a comment yesterday and I kind of want to go back through it here because I think it illustrates perfectly some of the approaches that we have as a fan base and the difference between the two. Salah was great at Roma, elite at Liverpool. Mane was great at Southampton, elite at Liverpool. Firmino, same. Jota, same. Gakpo coming up. Nunez, hopefully. No more gambles. When Liverpool signed Mo Salah, there are the famous quotes of that he would just be another mid-level Premier League player. Genuinely, I think Mina Rizuki was on the BBC saying she thought it would be a bit of a flop. He'd be getting no more than 10 goals a season. He was a good player, but I didn't have particularly high expectations for him. There are decent expectations for him. People didn't understand the role at that time. And, we'll go on. Mane, I think he was an elite level Premier League player. I think Manchester United were looking at him too. He was certainly a very decent player, but I don't think anyone expected Mane to be much above what he did for Southampton, say. Firmino came from the Bundesliga. No one expected him to do what he did in the Premier League. Cody Gakpo, I guess a high-profile signing, but did anyone really expect him to do what he did? And Jota was fourth choice at Wolves at the time. People said there were better choices for Liverpool to spend their 40 million on than Jota, because there were other players in the Wolves team that Liverpool could have signed. Now, of course, the price tag for Kubo would be a very high one, 60 million. He's described as elite, world-class, all these kind of things. If Liverpool profile him as such and they think there is a higher window, then your senses and mine are not going to be the same as a player, as someone who's been a scout for years and software that can run 50,000 different outcomes and work out the most likely outcome for Kubo. Even if you think that watching a YouTube video where 10 seasons have been run on Football Manager or FIFA has run this thing where you can go 10 seasons ahead and see where Kubo finishes, it's not going to be the same as actual software, which is then checked against actual people with expertise and credentials and credibility. It's just not going to be the same thing. So if you've had a good season with Kubo, with Real Sociedad, or you've bought him back to Real Madrid and you thought it was particularly good, cool. All I would say is, I understand people being naysayers. I don't think 240k a week is a particularly smart idea for someone who's a new signing. I don't think we pay Kubo 240k a week, though I'd be interested to know what Liverpool would pay him. Bear in mind that Luis Diaz is on, at the moment, close to a fifth of that wages-wise. So it might indicate where Liverpool are going with this. The £60 million price tag. Liverpool spend when they believe there is value in the market. They spent on Nunez. I think they may be vindicated still on that Nunez signing, but it still remains to be seen, though I think to an extent we were vindicated. I'm not sure whether... I think most people are too quick to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think a lot of people want to create this narrative that FSG don't really care about the club, that they're trying to save money, all these kind of things. I know they're not the biggest spenders, And I know there was this whole thing around Chelsea have spent 790 million more or something crazy than Liverpool in recent seasons since Bowley became manager. Or since Bowley owned the club and since Erik ten Hag became manager, Liverpool have spent 790 million less than Chelsea. Do you think spend genuinely represents all of what Liverpool have done? Liverpool have the third highest wages in the league, and though weirdly, very often that meant that Liverpool got third position or second place, wages tend to represent some of that. Though, again, I think there is a bit of causation and correlation going on here. Which one is which? Are we paying for wages out on the field? Does wages out on the field being high mean that you could just move Klopp out and bring Arne Slot in and therefore Liverpool will be equally as good? I don't think so. So a lot of people will pick and choose their arguments. And broadly, I think Michael Edwards and Richie Choose's task is to look beyond these small arguments of you don't pay enough wages, you don't pay enough transfer fees, you don't do this, you don't do that, and try and put together something from a wider image that Liverpool have got to put together. You wouldn't have said Mo Salah, Roberto Firmino. Keita, I think there was high expectation, but by that point, that was because we'd had so many hits in the transfer market that it was sort of like, hey, this guy came from a similar profile to where Salah came from. This guy came from a similar profile to where Firmino came from. Manchester United are doing similar things right now. Lenny Yoro, I think, represents great value in the transfer market when he comes good, and I think broadly, you could probably say that with the right coaching, he probably will. The same goes for Xerxes. That's why Manchester United worry me. I think more clubs are just employing some of our tactics and some of our ideas to try to get ahead in the market. Because guess what? Manchester United were desperate to sign Michael Edwards. Real Madrid made a move for him. Chelsea made a move for him. A lot of people wanted this guy because they knew that he represented value in the transfer market. And I get it. Jurgen Klopp made up a lot of the in between, which is why they went for Klopp over Edwards, which is why we knew that a manager who would have that level of control would be vitally important. Having a manager who can make up those numbers in the aggregate, a la Arne Slot, is an interesting one, is a good manager to have, because that is where the real work is done. Liverpool knew that hiring a head coach would be much more effective than hiring a manager under Edwards, under Hughes, because that manager is going to have so many skills that someone else would have paid him for that, guess what? You aren't going to be maximising. Getting a Conte, getting a Pochettino, getting a Rafa Benitez in this era would not make as much sense as getting someone who's a head coach. Because all three of those guys want to show that they are good and want to have their profile of player, want to have their profile of guys. Someone like Arne Slot is much more willing to work with a profile of player rather than the very specific player himself. He will still have transfer asks. He will still have people that he wants to get. But that doesn't mean that not getting really high-profile signings like Lenny Yoro, someone who it seems like was told to sign for Manchester United, even though he said all the right things. I think he would still fit in very well at Manchester United, all these kind of things. I think he was told to go there. And I don't think you can avoid that. If Real Madrid miss out on a player, and you are in that same category, you just have to swallow it, accept it, and move on. There is no, shall we try and convince this guy with higher wages? There is no, shall we try and outbid Manchester United? Manchester United have moved in the way that they move, weirdly. They've shifted in the way that they move. They are no longer going for these defunct players who, maybe was a slightly misfit toy elsewhere that will now fit in at their team. They're in a different era of transfers, and Liverpool need to realise their transition of era. It's easy, obviously, for someone on SDS to say, I think Liverpool will end up sacking Arne Slot by whatever time. I think those are very easy predictions to make, because you can only be vindicated in that if he is ultimately let go. If he isn't, then you go, well, no one saw this coming, because no one else is sitting out there putting their balls on the line in the opposite direction. So I'm going, actually, I think Arne Slot will be a great coach. Actually, I think he'll be there for 4 or 5 years, because those are the kind of things that people come back with receipts when he gets sacked. Because guess what? People who are vindictive, people who make these compilations are making the compilations because they don't appeal to broad football fans who are smart people. They appeal to people who want to have a schadenfreude moment. They want to see you tripped up. They want to see you make a prediction and be wrong in your prediction. So I get it. As a Real Madrid fan, it obviously makes sense for some of these guys to make those predictions. it's only just good fun. It's good sport. They will only have angry Liverpool fans tweeting at them. In the same way as I get annoyed by Real Madrid fans on social media, they're only going to be annoyed by Liverpool fans because these two profiles of people do not mix. Real Madrid fans and Liverpool fans are complete opposite approaches to football. We both, weirdly, come from like a similar dominant, and Real Madrid will want their exceptionalist nature put in here, but let's be real. Like if you take away the first few Champions Leagues that they had, because that was a different competition, then really they're much closer in terms of royalty to a Liverpool or a Manchester United. In fact, Manchester United are probably way closer to Real Madrid than Real Madrid realised. We'll get over that. The point being, very often it's easy, and in this era it's easy to panic and go, we need to be signing someone. Arne Slot doesn't have the tools. He's not good enough if he does get the tools. Why are we shopping in this area of players? It's because we aren't able to shop in the Lenny Yoro, whatever band of player that is. We were never going to get Bellingham. Well, we didn't get Bellingham with Klopp, and Klopp is one of the most elite managers in the world. Man City didn't get Bellingham with Klopp and Pep are like the most elite levels of manager. Klopp, Pep, Arteta, they're all players that people want to play for. Calafiori has proven that, though I still think Calafiori would have moved to the Prem in the first place. I'm not sure that Liverpool are looking at him. I'm not sure that City are looking at him. I think it's easy to feel, and in all this noise, as if we should be signing people. Liverpool don't even have their full squad back in pre-season yet. You can't even assess the squad as a coach. You probably do it as Michael Edwards and as Richard Hughes. They probably have longer term plans than just, does the coach like this player or not? But it's very difficult to then go, this guy's going to be here for 10, 11 seasons or 3 or 4 more seasons if he's barely spoken with the new coach. There is this whole thing around Trent this morning with is that going to be 6/6/2027 because we're going to re-announce him as a player? Much easier to do in AI or much easier to do in Photoshop than it is to do in real life, but fair play to you. Why do we get worried about this stuff? Because I think a lot of us project this idea that we know more than we actually know. The people who do the rumours know about as much as you do, unless they're Ornstein or Fabrizio Romano. Anyone else doesn't really have that in. And guess what? If we signed Kubo, yes, that would be a great signing. Would it be the last signing in the summer for Liverpool? It would be insane if that was the last signing of the summer for Liverpool. And what it would mean is that someone along the lines of Arne Slot or whoever it is who makes the decisions as to what we need for centre-backs and defensive midfielders and fullbacks says, we can make this work in this period. Because what's the point in being a Moneyball club, being a club who works differently to all these other clubs, if when it comes down to the crunch, you go, actually, we should just spend the money big anyway. It doesn't make any sense. And so what we're really doing is contributing to the noise of the world that we live in right now, because it's easy clicks, because it's easy chat, because it's easy to just make something up and just run with it. Kubo will be a great signing for Liverpool because guess what? If you put Kubo with a good coach, he will be a good player. Does he have deficiencies in his game? Yes. He can be easily stopped in La Liga at the moment. His assists and his goals don't nearly compare to Mo Salah because Mo Salah is one of the most prolific players in Europe. And yes, he might look smaller than some other players. That's because that is his profile of player. If you think that Liverpool should be just signing who you signed on FIFA, I'm not sure why you're watching. I mean, I get why you're watching these videos. You're looking for someone else to sign on FIFA, but I'm not sure why you're watching these videos and like chatting because it doesn't make any sense. I'm not saying that FSG couldn't invest more, but what I'm saying is, if you're a Liverpool fan, you've got to be all in with both feet and kind of going, oh, I'm a Liverpool fan. This is what we do. We don't invest the same amount as City do because that's not our identity as a fan base. That's not our identity as a club. We double down on that. We accept it. There'll be days when we're frustrated. But broadly, if your profile, frankly, your profile halfway around the world as a Liverpool fan matches my opinion, I will be surprised. Because we've watched this club from different perspectives. We will have different ideas on what the club need. I will have a different emotional investment to the one that you will. Not better, not worse. different. So I'd imagine you're watching a lot of these videos and you're into it. You want to win against your friends. Your friends are going, oh, you will never sign anyone, or these kind of things. They'll be watching SDS and they'll be sending you that clip. Oh, you might sack Arne Slot by when you're 10th in the league. It's kind of not the point of the project at this point. And if you think that sacking a manager solves a club's problems or means that you'll get someone else, tell me who you replace Slot with right now. Tell me who has a better profile than Salah. Do you know, genuinely? Because, and I know that's someone else's job. Yeah, but then why do you have a problem with whatever it is that Liverpool are signing? None of this makes any sense to me right now, is what I'm saying. And broadly, I'm bored of watching people attack either FSG in a video, make up a scenario that hasn't even happened yet at Liverpool, and make it stick. Or, and I'm not having to go at SDS, I think it's a great podcast, but I'm just saying it's easy to attack from the outside. Obviously, it's easier to attack from the outside. Or, you just go, Liverpool are going to fail. I think Liverpool are going to be a poor profile of player because they can't afford the same people that Real Madrid can, or they can't afford the same people that Man City can. That's not the exercise that I think Michael Edwards and Richard Hughes are trying to go through. Hope this video makes sense. Enjoy the channel. There is a Patreon down there. There is a Discord down there. Go take a look at him, and I'll see you guys in there. Much love.